Hello everybody, it's me, Baby Reginald. Mr. Miller asked me to come and present this PowerPoint notes. No idea what PowerPoint notes are, but I'll do my best. He said that as a fetus, I'd know just what's going on. One thing I do know, even though I'm just a baby, Mr. Miller is a really terrific guy, isn't he? What a great guy. Boy, when I grow up, I want to be just like Mr. Miller. Alright, here I go. I'm going to do my best. You watch this video and I'll be back. I'm Reginald. I'm a baby.
No matter who you are, once upon a time, you looked like this. From a single cell, you built a body that has 100 trillion cells. You made hundreds of different kinds of tissues and dozens of organs, including a brain that allows you to do remarkable things.
Zygote. I used to be a zygote. That's when a sperm, that always makes me laugh, carrying half the necessary DNA, I don't know what DNA is, I'm just a baby, combines with an egg containing half the necessary DNA. They combine together to make a zygote. It's got a completely unique, never-before-seen set of DNA. I'm unique. That's me, Reginald. Unique. A zygote contains all the genetic information. That's DNA. Now I know. I learned something. Necessary to become a child. The zygote undergoes mitosis. No idea what that is. I'm just a baby. Until a ball of cells is formed. I think that's what's going on here. I used to be one cell, and then it's two. Mitosis must be making more cells. Look at that. There's a clear shell around it. Who knew that humans had eggshells? Ha ha! I'm Reginald. Okay, watch these two videos. Don't forget to take notes. Whatever notes are.
Stretched out, they could cover half a mile. Inside all this tubing, the average man is churning out 1,000 new sperm every second. That's about 100 million new sperm every day, and more than 2 trillion over a lifetime. And here's the tricky part. Each and every sperm is one of a kind, carrying a unique genetic package. How is this possible? How can one person produce so many different combinations of genes? The answer lies in the very special way we make sperm and eggs, a process called meiosis. In almost every cell of your body, you have 30,000 or more different genes, spread out on very long strands of DNA, called chromosomes. Most cells have 2 versions of every gene on a total of 46 chromosomes. Exactly half of those, 23, came from your mom, and 23 came from your dad. They come in pairs, where the partners are very similar but not quite the same. The only time they get together is during meiosis. Here's how it works inside a testicle that's making sperm. First, each chromosome makes an exact copy of itself, keeping it attached at one point. They condense, creating an X shape. Now the chromosome partners get together, and the 2, or actually 4, will embrace. They cling so closely, big chunks carrying whole bunches of genes get exchanged between the partners. The cell then divides twice, each time pulling the pairs apart. The final result is a sperm, or an egg cell, with 23 chromosomes, half the normal number. By itself, the cell is incomplete, but it still holds incredible promise, because every chromosome now carries a combination of genes that has never existed before. If all goes well, then farther up the tube, they'll find the egg. But it's heavily chaperoned by support cells. And the chaperones are picky. Only some of the sperm are let through. Those who make it will face yet another challenge. Underneath the cloud of cells, the egg itself is encased in a thick protein shell called the zona. To fertilize the egg, the sperm must break through the zona, but even the strongest can't do it by brute force alone. The egg demands a proper introduction. Proteins protruding from the sperm's cap must hook up precisely with a set of proteins on the egg's surface. If they match, the sperm is held fast and undergoes a dramatic transformation. It sheds its outer coating, releasing powerful enzymes that dissolve a hole in the zona, allowing the sperm to push its way through. The final hurdle passed, the sperm still does not thrust its way into the egg itself. Rather, the membranes of the two cells fuse, and the egg draws the entire contents of the sperm inside. Ready or not, once sperm and egg get together, they have their own agenda: to create a viable embryo. Their chances aren't great. It's estimated that more than 50% of all fertilized eggs fail to develop. If it's going to survive, the egg has a lot of work to do. First, it orders the zona to lock out all other sperm. And then the egg must finish meiosis, expelling half of its chromosomes into this tiny pouch called a polar body. With the door closed behind it, the single sperm already inside releases its precious cargo. The sperm's 23 chromosomes stretch out in the roomy, welcoming egg.
Hey, Blastocyst! I used to be a Blastocyst. Look at me! That's me? What is that? That's me on the head of a pin? Look at that. I must have been tiny. In a few days, a ball of cells consisting of an inner group of cells and an outer shell are formed. This ball is called a blastocyst. The inner cells will become the fetus. The outer shell will become the membranes that nourish and protect the fetus. That's amazing. I wonder what the membranes are. I think that's the placenta, the umbilical cord, and the amniotic sac. That's the outer shell. And the baby, that's me, Reginald. I was the inner side, the cells on the inside. Wow, I'm learning so much. But that figures I'm a baby. All right, watch this video.
The chromosomes of sperm and egg approach each other, and then the cell divides. Since the moment the sperm entered the egg, 24 hours have passed. All this time, the fertilized egg is moving down the fallopian tube toward the uterus. Every few hours, the cells divide. 4, 8, 16. Gradually creating the building blocks needed to construct an embryo. On rare occasions, the tiny cluster of cells splits into two groups and creates two embryos, identical twins. But most of the time, the cells stick together. They must complete just the right number of cell divisions before they arrive in the uterus, about 5 days after fertilization.
Oh man, that's so much information. My head is going to explode. Embryo. I used to be an embryo. The cells begin to differentiate. No idea. Oh, take on specific functions. Types of cells that make up a human being. Some form blood cells, others form nerve, bone, lots of different types of cells. I'm made of different cells. You're made of different cells. They have to get on a specific job. That's differentiate. These first few weeks are when a developing child is most at risk. Uh-oh, from what the mother takes into her system. Drugs, smoking, alcohol. Oh man, us fetuses fear that sort of thing. You didn't know that us fetuses talk, but there's a whole coalition of fetuses. Fetuses for freedom, we call ourselves. Okay, go ahead and watch this video. Don't forget to take notes. Oh.
What started as a large single cell has divided into just over 100 much smaller cells. But they're still trapped within the hard shell of the zona. Now called a blastocyst, the bundle of cells must do two things to survive: break out of the zona and find a source of nourishment. At the beginning of the 6th day, it orchestrates an escape. It releases an enzyme that eats through the zona, and the ball of cells squeezes out. Free at last, the blastocyst lands on the blood-rich lining of the mother's uterus. It has just passed one hurdle, but is immediately presented with another. For in fact, it is now in very grave danger. Stripped of its protective coating, the blastocyst could be attacked by the mother's immune system as a foreign invader. White blood cells would swarm in to devour it. In its own self-defense, the ball of cells produces several chemicals that suppress the mother's immune system inside the uterus, in effect convincing the mother to treat it like a welcome guest. Then it is free to get to work. Searching for food and oxygen, cells from the blastocyst reach down and burrow into the surrounding tissue. Eventually, they pull the entire bundle down into the uterine lining.
Oh man, embryo! I used to be an embryo. This is the first week of being an embryo. It's moved from the fallopian tube. I can't believe I went down the fallopian tube. I was formed in the fallopian tube. To the uterus, where it attaches to the uterine wall. Mr. Miller showed another PowerPoint where it showed blood lining the uterus wall. That was for me, so I can put in my tendrils down into the uterine wall and start to get oxygen, food, water, everything I need. The placenta and umbilical cord will grow. They grow from me. They grow from the embryo, not from the mother. And connect the fetus to the mother. This will be the fetuses. That's me, Reginald. Only source of food, water, and oxygen. I just said that. Look at me. Wasn't I a beautiful little baby? All right, here comes another movie. Go in and watch. Pretty fascinating stuff.
One milestone event takes place just 2 weeks after conception, when the blastocyst is about the size of a poppy seed. This is the moment when the cells start to organize themselves into an embryo. The process is called gastrulation. With animals like frogs, whose embryos develop inside transparent eggs, it's easy to see it in action. After the egg becomes a hollow ball of many cells, some cells dive into the center, forming layers, which will go on to develop into different organs. In humans, gastrulation happens deep inside the mother's uterine lining, so it can't be photographed. But we think it works something like this. The blastocyst creates two oblong bubbles, one on top of the other. Sandwiched between them is a thin layer of cells. These are the cells which one day may become a baby. At the beginning of gastrulation, some cells begin moving toward the center. Then they dive downwards, creating a new lower layer. More cells plunge through, squeezing in between, forming a third. The cells in the three layers may not look different, but for each layer a very different future lies ahead. The lower cells are destined to form structures like the lungs, liver, and the lining of the digestive tract. The middle layer will form the heart, muscles, bones, and blood. And the top layer will create the nervous system, including the spinal cord and the brain, as well as an outer covering of skin and eventually hair. This is a human embryo 3 weeks after fertilization. Less than 1/10 of an inch long, its neural tube, the beginning of the nervous system, is already in place. A couple of days later, the top of the tube is bulging outwards on its way to becoming a brain. With the primitive brain cells exposed, we can see some are sending feelers, making connections to their neighbors. As the days pass, changes proceed at a rapid-fire pace throughout the embryo. Everywhere, cells are multiplying, and they're on the move. Some reach out to one another, forming blood vessels. A heart begins to beat. As the embryo lengthens, the precursor to the backbone forms. Groups of cells bulge out on the sides, the beginnings of arms and legs. This is the embryo 4.5 weeks after fertilization. It is only about 1/5 of an inch long. The primitive backbone now curls into a tail, which will disappear in a few weeks. A large brain is developing, and on the side of the head, an eye. How does this happen? How does the embryo transform itself from a blob of cells into different tissues and organs, and finally into a fully functional baby? The secret, of course, lies in your genes, in your DNA.
Ah, here's me when I was just a tube. Look at me. I had a hole on one end and a hole on the other. Not much else. Crazy. Oh, look at me. After about 5 weeks, I had a little brain, eyes, even a tail. What? I'm not a fish. I had a spinal cord, a brain, my heart was beating, pa-pump, pa-pump. It still is. Time to watch another movie.
Nerve cells, blood cells, cells lining your intestine, they all look different and they do different jobs. That's because in each of these cells, different groups of genes are turned on. And when a gene is turned on, it tells the cell to construct a particular protein. Proteins are the molecules that build your body. Like collagen, a fiber that makes up much of your skin, tendons, and bones. Or keratin in your hair. Crystalline is the protein that helps make the lens of your eye clear. Some proteins do work. Actin and myosin move muscle fibers. Hemoglobin in the blood carries oxygen from the lungs to the rest of the body. So when the embryo is developing, how does a cell turn on the right set of genes and create the right proteins? Part of the answer seems to be location. Once the basic body plan is established, with the head on one end, back and front, and left and right sides, cells seem to know exactly where they are and what they are supposed to become. This is because cells talk to each other in the form of chemical messages. Chemicals in one cell can trigger a reaction in the cell next door that can spread to the cell's nucleus and turn genes on or off. But what's really going on in there? How does a gene get turned on? If all the DNA in a single cell were stretched out, it would be about 6 feet long, but it's all wound up very tightly, coiled around balls of protein. For a gene to be turned on, something has to come in and loosen up the right section. Then the cell's machinery can latch on and read the DNA, the first step on the long road to building a protein. Those molecules that can turn genes on play a key role in every aspect of development, including the process that transforms the embryo into a boy or a girl.
Hi, it's me, Reginald, still here. Here's me, pretty much as I look today. Well, almost. I'm a little bit more advanced than this. This is after about 8 weeks of being an embryo. Now I'm a fetus! Yay! Most of the organs and main body parts are there. You can see my hands, my little feet, eyes, my gigantic, super smart brain that allows me to do this. Look, here's the umbilical cord. Connecting me to Mom. Aww. I'm getting everything through that now. It's definitely a big change from just being implanted in the uterus wall. Alright, more movies, of course. Go ahead and take notes.
Sometimes genes send the message to multiply and grow, as with the arm and leg buds. Sometimes the message is to die, as it is a few days later to the cells between the fingers. As the weeks pass, the embryo's genes send billions of individual messages, constructing new kinds of cells and building organs and limbs. Two months after fertilization, the embryo is now called a fetus. Almost all its organs are in place, though they're not working yet. The whole fetus is just over an inch long and weighs less than 1/3 of an ounce. Over the next 6.5 months, it will grow almost 400 times larger and prepare for birth. All of this demands a constant supply of nutrients. It's no surprise that Melinda might be especially hungry. The fetus she's carrying has only one source for all the raw materials it needs to grow into a baby: Melinda's blood, which is systematically raided with the help of the placenta. The placenta began to form as soon as the blastocyst burrowed into the mother's uterus, and in the early weeks it dwarfed the embryo. The underside of the placenta is covered with thousands of tiny projections, called villi, which lie in pools of the mother's blood. Without ever mixing the blood of mother and child, The villi grab oxygen and nutrients. The enriched blood flows about 1.5 feet through the umbilical cord back to the fetus, whose heart beats about twice as fast as an adult's. The heart is one of the few organs that actually work during the earliest weeks of development. But with other organs, function comes later. With the eye, although the retina and lens are well formed by the 9th week, the fetus doesn't respond to light until the 5th or 6th month. And the same for the ear. The outer ear quickly takes shape, but the fetus can't hear yet. Sound conduction relies on the tiny bones of the inner ear, and most of the bones in the fetus start out as cartilage. By the 4th month, hard bone can be seen forming in the hand and the leg. Finally, after 5 months, the process is complete in the inner ear. And then, the fetus begins to hear sound. All the organ systems are in place, so during the last trimester, the fetus's main job is to grow. But a few crucial events are unfolding beneath the skin. Fat deposits are forming, building reserves the baby will rely on after birth. But even more importantly, fat is getting laid down in the brain. In the 6th month, genes in the brain order the manufacture of a fatty substance called myelin, which wraps around the long connections between brain cells. This fatty covering allows nerve impulses to travel up to 100 times faster, greatly enhancing brain power. The process will continue for years after the baby is born.
Wow, 10 to 32 weeks. I'm about ready to be born. I can't believe it. Here's me when I was only 10 weeks old. I look pretty good. Still big time. Everybody's connected to that umbilical cord. Look at me, I'm sucking my thumb here at 12 weeks. 32 weeks, I'm about ready to be born. Boy, my eyes weren't completed that long ago. Look at that. 24 weeks. What is that? That's like 8 months. At about 9 months, I'm ready to be born. I can't wait to see everybody. Another movie. Go ahead and watch it. Mr. Miller's got some notes for you to answer, some questions. Were you paying attention? I hope so. I don't want to have to do this again. What is a fertilized egg called? Oh boy, I wonder if you can go back and find that in these PowerPoint notes. As long as you were filling in the blanks. go and answer all these questions. Oh boy, I feel something funny. It looks like I'm about to be born. Yay! Whoa, I see light. Oh man, this is the greatest thing ever. I'll see you guys soon. This is me, Reginald, on my